closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. You'll want to avoid room 217. It doesn't like to be watched. That was the first thing the night nurse said to me, her voice flat, her eyes hollow as if something had drained the soul from her long ago, and I should have listened. God, I should have listened. Cassie's boots crunched over brittle leaves as she stepped out of her dented sedan into the cold breath of November. The wind cut sideways, dragging through the hollow parking lot and tugging her black scrubs against her legs. Behind her, crows gathered along the fence, watching in eerie silence, their feathers soaked with sleet. One let out a shriek that made her stomach twist. Just nerves, she told herself. College by day, night shifts to pay the bills. This is just exhaustion, not a horror movie. But the building disagreed. Gravestone Nursing Home stood like a rotting corpse against the colorless sky, long and gray, stretching wide with too many windows, most of them dark, some flickering dim yellow light like dying fireflies. Gargoyles perched along the roof's corners, relics from a time the building had been something else entirely, a mansion, a sanitarium, or worse. Cassie adjusted her hoodie and walked toward the staff entrance, her footsteps echoing too loud in the empty world. As she stepped inside, a foul smell crept up her nose, bleach and something older, something rotted. "Welcome to Gravestone," a voice called from the end of the hall. Cassie turned and saw her first co-worker, Marla, pale, skeletal, eyes sunken like bruises. Her badge read RN Supervisor, but her posture screamed done with life. "I'm Cassie," she offered with a smile that quickly faded. Marla didn't return it, just nodded. "Don't wander at night. The building's old, no cameras, and you'll hear things. Ignore them." Cassie blinked. "Sorry? Like what?" Marla shrugged. Whispers, scratches, laughter, same old story. She turned and vanished around the corner, her shoes silent on the waxed floor. The facility looked worse on the inside. Long winding hallways stretched into shadow with fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered like they were gasping for life. The wallpaper peeled in curled strips, revealing old, water-stained plaster beneath. Cassie passed patient rooms, some doors cracked open, most completely shut. She stole glances into them. Elderly patients lay unmoving, some strapped in beds, their eyes glassy, unblinking. Others just stared at the ceiling, mouths agape, silent. None of them looked aware. She passed room 217. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, a woman in a hospital gown stood completely still, facing the wall. Cassie stepped closer. "Ma'am, do you need—" The lights flickered. A music box tune chimed faintly, like a lullaby scratched from an old vinyl. She blinked, and the woman was gone. Cassie peered inside. The bed was empty. The room was silent. She backed away fast. Later, in the staff lounge, she met Dave, mid-20s, charming in that I shouldn't be working this job kind of way. Tousled dark hair, tired eyes, Red Bull in hand. "You knew?" he asked, sipping from the can. "First night, I'm Cassie." "I'm Dave. Here's your survival tip. Never trust the elevator. And if you hear a knock at the window, don't answer. This place is wrong." She gave him a look. "You mean haunted?" He smirked. "Urban legend says a thing lives here. Tall, watches from the halls. Doesn't show itself unless you stare too long into the dark." Cassie laughed nervously. "You're joking." "Yeah, sure," he said, but his eyes didn't match the grin. That night, Cassie was checking on room 105 when she heard it, giggle, childlike, echoing from the east wing. She turned. No one. Then, footsteps, soft, dragging. She walked the hallway, the air thick and heavy, until she saw movement. An elderly man in a gown shuffled into a room and vanished. She followed, but when she opened the door, the man was asleep in bed, monitors beeping steadily. Her heart pounded. Her hands were shaking. Okay, no more true crime podcasts before shifts. Then a whisper. Cassie. She turned. No one. 3:12 a.m. Cassie stepped into the hallway after logging vitals. The lights flickered. The air had gone colder. Then she saw her. An old woman at the far end of the hall, no shoes, hospital gown trailing like torn paper. She raised a hand and beckoned. Cassie, come here. Her voice was wrong, a layered rasp in a language Cassie couldn't recognize. Chanting, wet-sounding, the woman's eyes glowed red. Cassie stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. The woman lunged. Cassie screamed. But the lights went out. When they flickered back on, the hallway was empty. Cassie nearly collapsed. She ran into Dave in the main corridor, her face pale, eyes wide. I saw something, she panted. An old woman. She was chanting, red eyes. Dave looked at her, this time serious. You saw her too? Cassie didn't sleep after her shift. She sat on the edge of her twin mattress in her freezing apartment, still in her scrubs, staring at the blank wall across from her. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her skin still felt cold, like the air from that hallway had clung to her bones. Red eyes, chanting. No one believed that kind of thing, right? Except Dave. He had looked at her like he knew. The worst part, she couldn't tell if she was going crazy or finally seeing something real. She returned the next night, heart thudding louder with every step up the stone front path of Gravestone Nursing Home. This time, no crows watched her. They screamed at her. One dive bombed her hood and flew away cawing like it had seen something far worse behind her. She didn't look. The night started quiet, too quiet. Marla was absent, no word. The lounge was empty except for a flickering vending machine and a cracked ceramic angel someone had smashed against the coffee pot. Dave appeared an hour in, looking rough. Didn't sleep, he muttered. Dreamt about her again. Cassie sat beside him. The chanting one? He nodded slowly. They say she used to live here, back when it was a private asylum. A patient who chanted to summon something. A tall shadow, she claimed, protected her. But then she slit her throat with a spoon. Cassie laughed. A spoon? He didn't smile. No one knows how she got it sharp or how she made it to the ceiling with no ladder. They found her body hanging. Cassie went cold again. Around 2:47 a.m., Cassie turned down the north hall. The lights were dead here. Her flashlight buzzed and dimmed as she stepped into the dark. Dave, she whispered. She had just passed him a minute ago. Maybe he'd headed this way. Then she saw him, standing perfectly still at the end of the hall, back to her. Dave, you okay? He didn't move. Cassie walked slowly toward him, the beam of her flashlight bouncing erratically across the walls. Dave, say something. He turned around, but it wasn't Dave. Same face, same hoodie, same exhausted eyes. But the smile, it stretched too wide, teeth too long, too sharp. The thing lifted its hand and pointed to her chest. Cassie screamed and stumbled back, flashlight clattering to the floor. When she scrambled to her feet, the hallway was empty. Cassie! She turned to see Dave running toward her from the opposite end. What happened? She backed away. I saw you, but it wasn't you. His face twisted with fear. You saw the Watcher. Cassie didn't speak. He grabbed her arm. It mimics people. It watches. It gets closer every time someone sees it. That's what the chanting summons. You saw it, didn't you? She nodded slowly. It smiled at me. Dave paled. Then it's chosen you. Dave didn't say anything for a long time after that. Cassie followed him down the east hallway, her shoes making no sound on the linoleum, even though she knew they should. The air felt tight again, like the building was breathing just beneath the surface. Finally, he stopped outside a locked storage room marked Records and pulled a key from his lanyard. You sure you want to know this? He asked. I'm already in it, she whispered. Dave opened the door. Dust, old paper, faded folders stuffed into mildewed boxes. But there, in a taped-up crate labeled 1948, Private Ward was a bundle of black and white photos and an old journal, water-damaged and fragile. Cassie read by the dim flashlight while Dave watched the door. The journal belonged to a nurse named Dolores Keene. It detailed the arrival of a patient known only as Subject H. He was taller than any man I've seen, mute, covered in long black robes, limbs too long for his frame, as if someone pulled them out of socket and reassembled him wrong. His face was covered in wax or cloth, stitched shut with only faint impressions of what used to be eyes and a mouth, but I could feel him watching. Photos showed shadows with gangly outlines. Crows appeared at every window in every shot. Subject H doesn't move, but if you look away and then back, he's always closer. Patients chant to him at night. Some now speak languages we don't recognize. Cassie slammed the book shut. This can't be real, her voice shook. Dave looked her dead in the eye. He's called the Hollow One. The staff used to pretend he wasn't real, but now he lives in the forgotten wings. The crows always caw when he's near, and if you see him more than once, you don't wake up. Somewhere outside the room, down the dark hallway, a music box began to play, faint, twisting, slowing, and the crows, they started screaming. He's here, Dave whispered. Cassie and Dave bolted from the records room as the music box echoed down the corridor, each note warping like it was melting. The emergency lights flickered red, casting strobe-like pulses that made the hallway look like it was breathing. They turned a corner and stopped. A door stood at the end of the hall. It hadn't been there before. It was tall, carved from wood blackened by rot and flame, with a red doorknob that pulsed like a heartbeat. There was no room on the floor plan that matched this section. Dave stared, his voice barely a whisper. The red room. It's not supposed to be here. Cassie shivered. What's in there? He looked at her terrified. Time doesn't work right in that room. Cassie stepped forward anyway. Then we find out why. The door creaked open with a slow scream. The air inside was colder than anything Cassie had ever felt. It hit her lungs like ice water. The room was massive, far bigger than the outside allowed. The ceiling arched high, lost in shadow. Old gurneys lined the walls. A rusted chandelier dangled from exposed beams, its lights flickering erratically. On the floor were hundreds of broken clocks. Their ticking was out of sync, chaotic. Some moved forward, some backward, others pulsed like heartbeats. In the center of the room was a hospital bed. A figure lay in it, unmoving. Cassie crept closer, boots crunching glass and gears. The figure was covered in a white sheet, but she could see the outline. emaciated limbs, too long, a neck that looked wrong. Dave hissed, "Don't get closer." Cassie pulled the sheet back. There was no face, just a waxy indentation, as if a face had been smoothed over with a hot iron. Stitch marks spiraled where eyes and a mouth should have been. Then the lights in the chandelier flared, and all the clocks stopped. The figure sat up. Cassie screamed and stumbled backward as the faceless thing turned its head toward her. It spoke without a mouth, words vibrating through her spine. "You shouldn't be here." The walls groaned, the room rippled, and Cassie saw it, flashes of herself trapped in this room, watching herself through the window over and over, like a loop. The Hollow One had marked her. "Cassie, run!" Dave shouted. She snapped out of it just in time. They ran, slamming the door behind them, breathless and shaking. Back in the hallway, they collapsed against the wall. Cassie gripped Dave's sleeve. "That thing, it's not just a ghost. It's like it's feeding off something." Dave nodded slowly. "Time, fear, memories, whatever it is, the Red Room is how it holds people." Cassie looked at him. "You've been in there before." He didn't answer right away. Then finally, "I watched a nurse vanish in that room months ago. She walked in and never came out, but I kept seeing her, sometimes in windows, sometimes asleep in empty beds. She looked right at me and mouthed, 'Help me.'" Down the hall, the elevator doors creaked open on their own. Inside, nothing waited. But the music box was playing again, and this time it was coming from the 3rd floor, the floor that had been sealed shut since the fire in 1956. They stood before the elevator for what felt like forever. Cassie broke the silence. "Do we go up?" Dave didn't move. His voice was low. "There are no patients on 3, just memories. And fire damage." The elevator dinged. Against all instinct, they stepped inside. The doors closed. The music box stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse. Then, the lights overhead blinked out, and the elevator dropped fast. Slam. The doors opened. Cassie stepped into a hallway that shouldn't exist. Peeling red wallpaper, burnt walls, lights flickering in slow motion, gurneys on their sides, wheelchairs rusted and warped, a melted crucifix twisted on the wall. Dave held her hand now, tight. "We shouldn't be here." But they walked anyway. The walls whispered. Cassie could hear her name again and again, echoes in different voices. Some sounded like her, some sounded like Dave. Then she saw them, the patients. Standing in the hallway, silent, still, and every one of them was facing the wrong direction. Backs turned, heads slightly tilted. Cassie stepped closer to one, an old woman she remembered from room 108. The woman slowly turned her head, but her face was gone. Just wax, like the Hollow One. Then all the patients began walking in unison toward the end of the hall. A door opened there, and behind it, the Hollow One. It towered over them, arms dragging, head twitching slowly. Cassie turned. "Run." They sprinted back toward the elevator, but it was gone. The hallway was a loop. Every turn brought them back to the same place. "We're trapped," Dave gasped. Cassie turned to face the patients. They had stopped, and now they were all pointing at her. The silence broke like glass. A scream tore through the hallway, not from the patients, but from Cassie. Her voice bounced off the walls and came back, sounding wrong, warped, echoed twice. The hollow one moved. Its steps didn't make sound, but the floor bent beneath it, like the tiles were resisting its weight. With every twitch of its head, the overhead lights snapped and hissed, plunging the hallway deeper into red-lit shadow. Cassie clutched Dave's arm. "We can't outrun it." "We don't have to," he said, eyes darting down to the cracked crucifix. "We burn it." Cassie blinked. "What?" "It was born in the fire. Maybe it can die in one." They fled through the looping hallway until they found a side door, one that hadn't been there before. It led to an old maintenance stairwell, the walls scorched with soot and crumbling paint. On the landing was a blackened sign that once read boiler room. They didn't speak as they descended. Below, the air grew thick and hot. Something rumbled deep beneath the floor. The boiler still ran, barely, hissing like a caged animal, its old pipes groaning with age and pressure. Dave pointed to the shelves. There, kerosene, matches, everything they tried to forget. Cassie grabbed a heavy canister and glanced at the broken furnace door. Inside, blackened bone fragments were still visible, fused to rusted metal. "This is where the fire started in '56, Dave muttered. They blamed faulty wiring, but it wasn't that. The nurse who summoned the hollow one, she burned herself to try and kill it. She failed." Cassie's breath fogged in the air. "So we finish it." They climbed back to the third floor, gas canisters in hand. The hallway was empty now. No patients, no lights, no sound, just the low hiss of the music box playing from somewhere unseen. They poured fuel down the corridor, dousing the walls, the floor, the doors. The scent was dizzying, sharp and chemical, and then, behind them, a whisper. "Cassie." She turned. Dave stood at the other end of the hall, but he hadn't moved. Her Dave was beside her. The thing wearing his face stepped forward, eyes glowing red, grin impossibly wide. "Light it," Dave said hoarsely. Cassie struck the match. The doppelganger lunged. She dropped the match. The fire raced up the walls in a wave of searing orange. Heat exploded through the corridor as the flames tore through the fuel. The doppelganger shrieked, not with pain, but fury. Its form shifted, melting wax dripping from its body as it collapsed into itself, twisting and writhing. The patients began screaming, not human screams, but animalistic, unnatural cries, as they vanished one by one, like smoke in reverse. The hollow one emerged from the flames. It did not burn, but it weakened. Its limbs shook, its stitched face began to crack. Cassie and Dave backed toward the stairwell as the ceiling began to cave. The creature lunged one last time, and the burning beams fell, crushing it in a storm of fire and rubble. They escaped coughing, bleeding, alive. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. The crows were gone. The sky, though still gray, didn't feel heavy. Cassie looked back at Gravestone Nursing Home as smoke curled into the sky. "Is it over?" she whispered. Dave didn't answer, because at that moment, her phone buzzed, a text, from an unknown number. "Room 217 is empty again. When can you cover your next shift?" Cassie didn't want to go back, but she couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe, couldn't exist without knowing if it was really over. Gravestone Nursing Home had been sealed off by local authorities. The fire was ruled accidental. No bodies were recovered, just soot, ash, and the warped remains of forgotten wheelchairs. But Cassie knew better. She returned 1 week later, alone. Dave had begged her not to, but she had to see it with her own eyes. The building looked different, as if it had been rebuilt overnight. No signs of fire, no scorched walls, no broken windows. It stood silent, pristine, waiting. The front door opened on its own. Inside, the lights were back on, the floors freshly polished, Music played softly from the overhead speakers, classical, warped by static. Cassie walked slowly through the corridors, no sign of staff, no patients, until she reached room 217. The door was closed. Her hand shook as she reached for the knob. It turned. Inside, the bed was made, perfectly tucked sheets, crisp and cold. A tray of untouched food sat by the window, but no patient, just a chair in the corner facing the bed and someone sitting in it. Cassie's breath caught in her throat. The figure was still, dressed in nurse's scrubs, long black hair, face hidden in shadow. Cassie stepped closer. "Hello." The figure didn't move. Cassie reached out. The figure turned. It was her. Eyes hollow, mouth sewn shut. Then the lights blew out. And from all directions came the sound of crows.